What's going on, y'all? This is John with Facemask Fantasy, and today we're doing a deep dive into Cade Otton, because with the surprise retirement of Rob Gronkowski, Cade Otton now steps into the tight end 2 role for the Bucs, who are going to be sorely in need of passing game options early in the year, with only Mike Evans, Russell Gage, Leonard Fournette, and Cameron Brate as really the only proven pass catchers in this offense in a year where Tom Brady is going to be trying to go out on the highest of high notes, a Super Bowl win. So who is Cade Otton? And can he be a day one starter for the Bucs? Let's find out. The Bucs selected Washington tight end Cade Otton with the 106th overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. Cade Otton is 6'5", 247 pounds, and he began his career with the Washington Huskies in 2018. And through 8 games, he only caught 13 receptions for 174 yards and 3 touchdowns. Not the greatest end-of-year box score, but again, he was only a freshman at the time. In his sophomore season, we saw some growth from him, as in 11 games, he caught more than double the number of passes, with 32 catches for 344 yards and 2 touchdowns. The receptions and the yardage went up in his second year, but his increased usage did not amount to an increase in his touchdown totals, and his yards per reception fell from 13.4 to 10.8. In his junior season, the COVID year, he only played 4 games. But in those 4 games, he caught 18 passes for 258 yards and 3 touchdowns, showing some real growth as both a blocker and a pass catcher in the minimal work afforded him. This unfortunately didn't carry over to his senior year in 2021, as in double the amount of games, 8 games, he failed to reach his receptions high watermark with 28 receptions for only 250 yards and 1 touchdown, and his yards per reception was the lowest of his college career with a yards per route of 8.9. And unfortunately for Otton, his season ended in an ankle sprain and a broken fibula. All in all, he totaled 1,026 yards and 9 touchdowns in 31 career appearances in college. Now, Cade Otton was not on my draft board as far as tight ends go when going into the NFL draft this past year, and that's likely due to the fact that Otton did not work out in the pre-draft process due to the foot injury, and was frankly not an efficient receiver in college with a career yards per route run of just 1.37. But he showed enough to NFL teams to be drafted just outside of the top 100 to a great team. But as far as year 1, we should all know by now that tight ends do not usually fire in year 1, despite what Freiermuth and Pitts did last year. Frankly, tight ends don't usually fire until years 3 or 4. So that, combined with the fact that Cameron Brate is still there and still only 30 years old, and Otton hadn't been cleared for on-field drills at rookie minicamp as he was still recovering from the November surgery after the high ankle sprain and the broken fibula injuries that ended his 2021 season, all this means to me that we should not be expecting Cade Otton to fire in 2022. Now, for those of you that know this channel, y'all know that I like to bring up RAS scores as it relates to tight end prospects. As on a whole, tight ends with RAS scores above 9 have all-pro potential, and tight ends that don't usually just don't have all-pro potential. There's outliers to this rule, of course, like your Zach Ertz's, but for the most part, if you're looking for a prospect that can turn into a Gronk, a Hawkinson, a Kelsey, a Goddard, a Kittle, a Jimmy Graham, etc., you want a tight end prospect with an RAS score above 9 upon entering the NFL. And Cade Otton's RAS score is incomplete, as he did not participate in the combine, and we only have his height, his weight, and his bench press marks, and of those marks, he scored at the okay level or below in all 3. All in all, an incomplete grade means we can't grade him off of that metric alone. We need to look elsewhere, namely at his scouting reports, to find out how athletic of a prospect he is, so we can accurately judge his ceiling. And his scouting reports, in most of the places I found, label him as a tight end with good size and strength. He's been called the best blocker in this class by some, which technically isn't what you want to hear about your fantasy tight end, but that does mean he technically has an on-field role as soon as he hits the NFL. And he is a reliable pass catcher, but he does not have game-breaking yards after the catch ability, and at first contact, he will generally go down. Other scouting reports say that his vertical game isn't likely to scare anyone, and while he is a threat to maneuver downfield, he doesn't have the raw speed to carry a safety over the top, and this limits his potential as a big play threat in the passing game, as well as his lack of yards after the catch ability. Based off of what these scouting reports say, he's probably a good athlete, but not a great or an elite athlete, and as such, he projects as a tight end 2 early in his career, and he feels like a good all-around tight end prospect that can eventually be a low-end starter in the league for an NFL team. He feels like someone who should fall into that Hayden Hurst, Max Williams spectrum, a good, solid NFL pro who doesn't necessarily translate to fantasy production. Remember, we don't expect him to be a starter until Tom Brady is long gone, unless Brady does play until he's 50, which we obviously do not expect. So the quarterbacks that he's going to be dealing with are a complete question mark. And non-elite tight ends with bad quarterbacks or middling quarterbacks are usually an afterthought from a fantasy perspective. But tight ends without that elite athleticism on teams with good quarterback play usually have a ceiling of a high-end TE2. And that's where I feel Cade Otton falls into the fantasy pecking order. Now, can he outproduce these comps and prove me wrong like a Dalton Schultz? Absolutely. Should we expect him to? Probably not. He should be a good NFL tight end with most likely a long NFL career ahead of him, but will probably not be a plus fantasy asset for your teams in the immediate future or down the road. But what do y'all think? Put your thoughts about Cade Otton into the comment section below, or better yet, tune into one of our weekly live streams. We have a live stream every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. EST, so come through, drop your question about Cade Otton or any other fantasy player or situation into the chat, and we can have a conversation about it in real time. But my name is John, this is Facemask Fantasy. Thank you for listening and have a great day.